You can do Nayania Baria, Nayania Manania, Manania. You can do Nayania Baria, Nayania Manania, Manania.
From the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council, this is the A Cuppa and Yarn podcast.
Hello everyone, this is A Cuppa and Yarn, the podcast brought to you by the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council. We love having you join us for these chats with some really deadly people. It means a lot to us, and we can't wait to continue bringing them to you. Your support means the world to us. This is episode 9 of our series, and after chatting to some academics and some high achievers in the business world, and more recently some incredibly talented footballers at the Koori Knockout, this one heads in a new direction yet again. And trust me, it's a story everyone needs to hear. It was a tough one to get through too. This week we caught up with a dear friend and colleague of the staff here at NSWALC, the lovely Theresa Lake. Her story will tug at the heartstrings, and I'm warning you now, get the box of tissues ready. Theresa has been through it all. A beautiful mother of 2 kids who had her world turned upside down when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. It's every woman's worst nightmare, and certainly news that took a major toll on Theresa and her family. She knows, despite the most horrific path to recovery, that she's one of the lucky ones. She's here with us now to tell her story. She recently appeared on national television and inspired everyday Australians with her toughness, her resilience, and sheer relentless will and courage to beat cancer, no matter what it took. It's a tough conversation, but so important, and one she hopes will inspire more women, especially in the Aboriginal community, to get out there and have your health checked. Don't leave it to chance. I'm so happy to be bringing you this very special story. I hope you enjoy it. This is A Cuppa and Yarn with the delightful Theresa Lake.
You can do Nayania Baria, Nayania Manania, Manania.
Yama, hello Theresa Lake.
Yama.
Welcome to A Cuppa and Yarn.
Thank you.
And look, thank you so much for taking the time to have a cuppa and a yarn with me today. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
No, that's all right. And I was sort of sitting here looking at, we do have our cuppas, everybody, and I've realised that Theresa and I are both non-dairy.
Yes, I've got an almond flat white with an extra shot.
As you do. And I've got soy milk, but I think you're probably a little bit more culturally appropriate than me, because I'd imagine that our ancestors would have had wild almond.
Probably.
Yeah, and pounding, to get the milky water, etc. So we're sitting in downtown Parramatta in the lovely Lady Latte, which they very kindly allow us to use for these podcasts. Now, Theresa, I think once we sort of dig in, I'm sure there are quite a few people who would be familiar with you, with your life story more of late. And, and it's a really hard one to tell. And I just want to say thank you for agreeing to have a discussion about that, around that, and yourself. But as we usually do with these podcasts, I go back to the beginning, so to speak, and so we can talk about the ground we walk on and our families. So who's your mob?
Who's your mob? Where you from?
Yeah. Where you from?
Where you from?
Who's your auntie?
Okay, so as you know, my name's Theresa Lake. My grandmother is Janita Kane. She's from Coonabarabran, and we originate from Burrabadee Mission in Coonabarabran. There's quite a connection there with the Kane family. Mary Jane Kane was one of the pioneers of that area, and wrote to the Queen to get land allocated, which was then turned into what we now know as a former mission and a reserve as Burrabadee. My grandfather is a Lake, and his mother was a Hampton, and he originates from around Galarganbone area, Dubbo. So that's my family, that's my connection.
Yeah. So I've been to Galarganbone a couple of times. It's a little place, eh?
Small. I don't even know if I've been there myself, probably as a very, very young child when my mum would go out picking asparagus and things like that. That was something that they did, the seasonal work, and, bought my first bike picking asparagus. So I love those times. They were the best. I grew up in Dubbo. So I was born and raised there till I was about, I think I was 14 when we left Dubbo and moved out to Campbelltown and finished my high schooling off out there. Then, had children, moved up to the Central Coast, and that's when I started working at NSWALC, so in 2008. So it's been a long time, and now I'm here in the big city.
So most of your family, still in Dubbo or further north as well?
I would say the majority of them are still in Dubbo, still living in Dubbo, but I do have family out Campbelltown Way, up on the Central Coast, but majority are still in Dubbo and Coonabarabran. So I don't get out there nearly enough, but I try.
Yeah, when
it's
you
hard
can.
to make it all work.
Yeah. Look, it sure is, and you can only make it work as much as it's going to work for you, basically. And I
family, job, the
life.
commitment, life, gets in the way a bit, doesn't it?
Do you have any siblings?
I have 2 younger siblings. I have a sister, Tammy. She works here at NSWALC as well, and a brother, Trent. So he's the baby, spoiled. Trent, if you're listening.
And you and Tammy, just so everybody knows, those 2 girls, they get on real good.
Yeah.
Well, from what I see, and sometimes
we fight sometimes. No, I'm just kidding.
Your sisters.
Siblings.
Your sisters.
We're part of the same equation here, the T-Lake equation, so we both just answer to that now.
Yeah, you do. No, but I see you guys walking sometimes and you haven't seen me or whatever, or when I catch people in what I call an unguarded moment.
Yeah.
And you're always smiling.
Yeah.
And you're always like giggling or laughing together as you walk.
It's quite funny because sometimes we'll get off the lift together after grabbing our morning coffee and we go to separate doors when we enter our offices and we'll say, I love ya. And so you can see that there's that moment where people kind of like, oh, hang on a second. Did they just say I love you in the hallway? It's like, yeah. Every time we leave each other or hang up the phone, say love you.
Yeah, look, hey, I tell people at work that I love them and I'm not related to them. So it's all good.
I love ya.
Yeah. But that's okay. It's just when you say, I love you.
Yeah, that's right.
That's getting serious.
That's
now.
a little bit maybe crossing a line.
That's getting deep. And you were saying you have a couple of kids. You have a boy and a girl. You're very proud of.
I have a boy and a girl. Yep, I'm extremely proud. I've got my daughter Layla. She's 18 now. She's recently returned this year from doing 7 months in Italy studying fashion.
Wow.
And my son is 17 at the end of the year, which he can't wait. He just wants to be 18 already. So.
Gee.
Jarvis, my
Jarvis,
big baby. My
Jarvis,
big baby.
I'm telling you, mate, you're going to spend most of your life being over 18,
Yeah.
so enjoy the rest of the time before you're 18.
Exactly, take it easy. No rush.
So, of course, you work at New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council. How long have you been there?
I've been with NSWALC for 11 years now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
congratulations.
started in 2008. So got my little certificate sitting on my desk. 10-year service.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And do you mind telling us just a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, well, right now I work with program implementation. So I'm a senior programs officer. But when I first started with NSWALC, I started in the Sydney Newcastle region with the councillor as a councillor support officer. And then a few years into that, I moved down to Parramatta and worked in the governance unit. Done a few things while I've been here. Then I moved on to policy work. That was a very different kettle of fish. It's an interesting area to work in.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I came to programs. So what I do is I work with local Aboriginal land councils who are, based on a formula, are the most disadvantaged LAUCs, and they have an opportunity to apply for funding and for grants to do community development outcomes in their communities. And I also do the scholarship fund as well. So that's my role at the moment, amongst other things.
Yeah, and they're two big areas.
They are. They're quite administratively heavy, but it brings me into contact with a lot of land councils, which I enjoy, and just speaking to them about what they're trying to achieve. So I enjoy that part of it.
And the education scholarship, of course, we have a whole new look scholarship.
Yeah.
Brand new one now.
Brand new. It's been revamped, revamped, and we've added a internship component to it, which is great. So we're trying to access a pipeline of of graduates in disciplines that apply to the land rights movement, and trying to access these graduates to come in and do some work here and hopefully recruit them. That would be the goal eventually. So we've got a lot of talented young people out there, so we want them here with us.
Make your mark on November 30. That's election day for the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Rights Network. Members, just go to our website at www.alc.org.au to find out how to lodge a postal vote and how to vote on the day.
So you've trod a varied path in the land rights movement with New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council with what you've done, and I know that has mixed quite incredibly, as it would, with your own personal path, which over the last few years. So, you were recently vaulted into public spotlight, like quite public, on the program This Time Next Year with Karl Stefanovic, about your cancer experience.
Yes.
In breast cancer.
Yeah, so that was a interesting time to say the least, but in 2018, in January 2018, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was going through some early scans to detect, what kind of cancer it was, how far along it was, and I was having a discussion with my sister while getting a coffee, and just I said, if I get through this, I will do life differently. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but literally within 5 minutes I'd gotten a call from my surgeon asking if it would be okay for her to put me in contact with the producers at This Time Next Year. And they gave me a call, and we had a chat about what was going on with me and being on the show. And at that moment I just kind of thought, you know what, life's kind of calling me out on a claim that I just made to do my life differently, because I'm normally a very private person. And I thought, no, I should do this. It would be helpful to me to have something to focus on, but helpful to others to hear, what it is really like to go through cancer treatment. Because I didn't know. I had no idea what I was in for. And you see a lot of information on social media, but what I soon found out during my treatment is that a lot of people aren't discussing the realities of it and how hard it can actually be. We all need something positive to focus on, which is great, but I'm a realist and I like to know what's in front of me so I can make plans, and I found that really difficult in the beginning to find people to talk truthfully about it. So I hope that by doing the show I helped somebody else out there to realise that they're not alone, and how they're feeling is normal and in a very abnormal situation. So
how did it come about? Was it a mammogram scenario for you?
I discovered a lump that was,
right.
Look, hindsight has 20/20 vision, and when I look back, I realised there was a few other symptoms that I had overlooked, and most women would overlook because we're just busy looking after our families. I had dimpling on my left breast, which I didn't know was a sign.
Yep.
I didn't know that at the time. I had some discoloration to my nipple. I didn't know that was a sign either. I just, you get up in the morning and you get ready to get on with your day. You're not standing there going over your body the whole time.
True.
Most of the time I'm avoiding mirrors.
Nah, come on.
So
She's good looking. Remember this one.
So I had discovered I'd been unwell, flu-like symptoms. That's another one that a lot of women, and being fatigued. We're busy. I've been tired since my kids were born. I can't remember a time when I wasn't tired. So all these things that looked at separately don't appear to be very much, but when you put them all together, it ended up being quite a big thing. So I'd found a lump, and I'd put off going to the doctors. I'd had some personal things happen within my family that were quite tragic, and going to the doctors to check out a lump just wasn't
top of the list,
Wasn't top of the list.
No.
And my daughter needed to go to the doctors, and she was the one who actually forced me to go and have a checkup, like, while we were there. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. I'm going to be at the doctor's. Let's have a look. My doctor wasn't even concerned. But he, as a precaution, sent me for a mammogram and an ultrasound. So a mammogram just basically has a look. It's a very grainy, grey picture, like an X-ray. But the ultrasound is diagnostic. That's the thing where they look at it and they go, okay, there's something not right here. I kind of knew when I was in there by the look on my radiographer's face. I could tell something was off.
Yeah.
And so that was, I think that was a Friday. And I was booked in for a biopsy on the Monday. And by Wednesday, I was back in my doctor's office and being told that it was cancer. And then that afternoon, I was straight in with a surgeon. Yeah. So talking about, everything from survival rates for 5 to 10 years, survival rates and percentages. And it's the most surreal situation when you have your children sitting beside you and you're looking at them and you're just stunned by what's unfolding. I just remember looking at my daughter, especially because she knew when the doctor was talking and she's saying, life expectancy for 5 to 10 years, it's at 70%, or it's such a blur right now what the percentages were. And, she's clocking this and saying, no, we need you longer than that. And my son's not quite fully understanding what's being said. He's just watching my daughter and I react. And I've looked at my daughter and my son and I just apologized immediately. That was my first instinct, was just, I'm sorry, because I felt like I'd failed them. Sorry.
It's okay. You're listening to A Cuppa and a Yarn. I'm Michelle Aleksandrovics-Lovegrove, and I'm talking with Theresa Lake about her story and her journey, a very courageous journey with breast cancer. We'll be back after the break.
You're listening to A Cuppa and a Yarn. Don't forget, November 30 is election day for the New South Wales Land Rights Network. You can lodge your postal vote or go to a polling booth on the day. Head over to the website at alc.org.au for more details.
You're listening to A Cuppa and a Yarn. I'm Michelle Aleksandrovics-Lovegrove. I'm talking with Theresa Lake, and we're having a yarn about, the day that your breast cancer was diagnosed, it was confirmed with your doctor, and pretty amazing of your two teenagers to be with you, but also I've got to say for you to be okay with them being there. Because a lot of parents still, even at their age, would have, they try and shield them from stuff.
Yeah.
There's no shielding, is there?
No. Real life is real life, right? And I don't think that my children would have allowed me to go to a doctor's appointment without them, or fully understand what my daughter especially, she's very pragmatic and stoic, and okay, what's next? What's in front of us, and what do we do next? And she was a great support, not only to me but to my son as well, in terms of explaining it to him in terms that was understandable, because all he sees is his mum,
of course.
And he's like, his whole world's about to be turned upside down. And my daughter was in her HSC year, and there was just a lot going on.
What are their names again?
Jarvis and Layla.
And is Jarvis J-A or?
He's J-A-R-V-I-S.
Yeah, okay.
And L-A-Y-L-A. Yeah.
I'm writing it down here.
Yeah.
The wrong way, of course. So,
I mean, they were there for everything.
Yeah, they were.
It was an interesting, I felt a lot of guilt about them seeing what I was going through, what was happening to me, not just physically but mentally. It was, as you know what it's like. As a mum, you just have guilt. You're always guilty of something. You feel guilty that you haven't done something the right way, or you should have protected them more. But when I look back at that time, I cannot think of how I could have been any different. I had no control over what was happening to my body. I did feel like I wasn't suffering the right way. As women, we tend to put on this superwoman cape and be strong and just get on with it, which we all do and we've all done in our lives, but sometimes that can be to our detriment.
What I find, as a woman, sort of mentioning before, and I do mammograms and whatever, is that with breast cancer in particular, would I be sort of right in that if you go into that space, which is so huge, is that you're not suffering well enough? Is that right?
That's exactly how I felt. I just felt like I wasn't doing it right, because I was seeing me being me. I wanted to research and find out, what was about to happen to me so I could prepare myself and my children. But I was seeing images of particularly women doing so well with their treatment and having chemo and doing squats in a hospital hallway whilst having chemo. And I was looking at this video and thinking, oh my goodness, what's wrong with me? I can barely get off the lounge. I don't know. I've got 20 minutes of clarity a day and all I want to do is talk to my kids, and here's this woman doing squats in a hospital hallway while she's having chemo. But this is because, on my particular, my first 4 rounds of treatment was an ACT treatment, and it's known as doxorubicin, affectionately known as the Red Devil.
That's right, I was going to say, because I remember you talking to me about the Red Devil.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, not all chemotherapy is the same.
No, they're varied, and as people react differently, they'll be adjusted. There's so many different chemo regimes. My chemo, being doxorubicin, was, before I started treatment, was given every 3 weeks, and that's quite a tough schedule. But then when I started, they'd found out that there was, a 5% improvement if it was given every 2 weeks. And at this stage, you start collecting your life by percentages. And it's like, I'll get 5% here and 10% there, and I'll take all the percentages I can get. So you do it, they hit you with the first one, and I, to be perfectly honest, didn't want to go back for the second one, and had actually contemplated that and had a conversation with my daughter basically, and just said I can't do it. It was the most painful thing I've ever experienced, not just physically but mentally. It just takes you to the edge of like an abyss. I can't really put into words what that stuff is like. But throughout it all, I think my kids were the ones who gave me permission to feel what I was feeling, and because I felt like I was safe there, I didn't have to pretend. I was in pain. That's just how it was. And I got up and I went for my second one, and all I kept thinking was just get to the next one, just get to the next one. And it wasn't until, I was a few weeks into the treatment that I found some women who'd been on the same chemo as me, who didn't really have to say anything, but just once I told them what it was, they just sighed in acknowledgement, just like they get it, It's a totally different experience, and not enough of the women who have been on that treatment talk about what it's really like, what it does to you. So.
Is there any, and certainly it's probably the last thing you'd want to do while you're having treatment, but any type of, sort of either sort of holistic conversations that you can have, or anything of someone, clearly not, I guess, beforehand, so they can sort of say, okay, you're going to have, it's doxycycline, is that what?
Doxorubicin.
Doxorubicin, sorry. What's doxycycline?
You get
I
a
think
list.
that's an antibiotic.
Yeah.
Sorry. The Red Devil.
The Red Devil. You get a list. With every treatment, it's very factual. These are sort of the common side effects. It's highly likely you'll have this, and these are the less common side effects, and it's probably about a 50-50 chance you'll have this. But nothing can prepare you. So as an example, they'll say hair loss, right? It's a pretty common side effect of this particular chemo. But no one told me that it would actually feel like a million pins in my skull,
While
as
the hair
my
was
hair
all-
is trying to fall out,
Yeah.
because it's dying at the follicle and it's pushing its way out. And so in the end, I'd persevered with it as long as I could, and it was just getting so... It was distressing for my son to see clumps of hair on the floor, but it was also painful for me to even lay down. It was like these pins and needles were pushing into my head, so I shaved it off. It was the only relief I could get from that. But those are the little, real world experiences that people don't talk about. They don't. They will say, oh, it's possible that you will lose all the connective tissue in your body. That could be the way your nails are joined, but your nails start to literally, it feels like burning at the fingertips as it's starting to separate from the cuticle. Towards the end of because I moved on to a different type of chemo, which was paclitaxel. Every fingernail had lifted from the nail bed. It was still attached, but lifted from the nail bed, and the only relief I could get was have Band-Aids around every single fingertip, and I couldn't use my hands to cut, or I couldn't do anything with my hands. These are the things that people don't tell you. And I've had people say, oh, because most of the time family and friends they're trying to gauge what's happening with you because it's new to them. And I get it. I was ignorant to it before I had to go through the treatment myself. But they're trying to understand it, but they're trying to gauge it based on who they know that might also be going through cancer treatment. And I've had comments, and I'm just going to say, this isn't any Susans that you would know, but she's just forever known as Susan now because I actually don't know the person's name. But Susan at work, she's breezing through chemo. And you're kind of just taken aback by those type of comments like, well, I'm not breezing through chemo, and who the hell's Susan? I'm really happy for Susan, but has anyone asked what type of chemo she's on, or is she even having chemo? Because just because you have cancer doesn't mean you'll have to have chemo. It depends on the type of cancer.
Yeah.
So there's all these factors that people don't fully understand, and they can make statements like that, which again can be so isolating because you're just like, again, here I go again, I'm failing at the chemo.
But look, also Susan, who knows what Susan has actually told. Susan's probably, sort of gone, well, look, it's not too bad. I'm doing okay. As we do.
We always say, I'm okay, I'm fine.
As we do.
And you might have got Susan on a good day as well.
That's right. And, I'm saying those squats in the hallway.
Yeah.
That's how long was that video?
Yeah, it's
30
a few
seconds?
minutes.
Only a few minutes?
Only a few minutes.
Yeah, but still, who knows what she was like 20 minutes later.
Exactly.
All of that. So I think we're worried, perhaps, that, I know I certainly am often, that if I actually say how it is sometimes, or we say how it is, you're being negative, or you're complaining, or you're bringing a downer, and you're impacting the mood of someone else.
Sometimes people aren't really prepared for the truth.
That's right.
And we often will filter ourselves so they don't feel uncomfortable. And that's when you're going through something like cancer treatment, to take on that burden of trying to make sure that other people don't feel uncomfortable when you're in this, you're just fighting for your life, it's too much to bear.
Yeah.
So, allow people, if you know someone, if you've got a family member that's going through it, allow them to feel it, and you don't have to come up with a solution. There is none. They need, this is what's happening right now, and you can love them and show love just as much by saying nothing. You don't have to say anything. And most of the time when I did talk to people, I didn't want to talk about cancer. That's right. The last thing. I just wanted to talk about everyday stuff. Yeah, it's a very, very interesting time in terms of my relationships with family and friends. But I think just as women, we need to throw away that superwoman cape and just go, you know what, it's okay to struggle, and it's okay that I'm not okay right now, and this is just how it is.
You're listening to A Cuppa and a Yarn. I'm Michelle Aleksandrovics-Lovegrove. I'm speaking with Theresa Lake, and we'll be back after the break.
Make your mark on November the 30th, the election day for the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Rights Network. Members, go to our website at www.alc.org.au to find out more information.
This is A Cuppa and Yarn from the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council. I'm Michelle Aleksandrovics-Lovegrove, and I'm speaking with Theresa Lake about her journey, very, very recent journey with breast cancer, and her decision to, make her experience one that she shares in a very real way. Thank you for through this podcast now too, but most certainly on Karl Stefanovic's program this time next year. And Theresa, part of that was, talking about telling it truthfully, how you're going. Not having to be superwoman, being real, being raw, etc. But not too many people are going to let a camera crew in while you're in the middle of your chemo treatment, while you're at.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe your lowest point. I mean, I watched it. Geez.
I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I watched it and I just went, wow, like my God, But that's it. That's the face, and that's the face that we don't see.
That was my reality, and as I said before, I'm not someone to share my private life, but I think as I went on with the treatment, it started off, the reason for me to do it was to do life differently, is because I basically said to the universe, if I get through it, I'll do life differently. And here was this, I was being called out. So that was why I did it in the first place. But then it kind of evolved into this frustration because I was seeing all these, palatable images out in the social media world about what it's like to go through cancer. I just became frustrated, and I thought, this is not how it is. Like I'm not a pink ribbon. This is not how I thought it was going to be. Like, they didn't say this on the paperwork they gave me. I don't really know what I was expecting, but I was just bombarded with positivity, which is great. We all need something to focus on. Like, don't get me wrong, this isn't about saying you shouldn't be positive, but I think what's missing is a bit of reality.
Authenticity.
Yeah, maybe. And I think it just allowing the cameras to come in and see that, and I did some video diaries as well, was kind of therapeutic as well, and I really just hoped that by sharing it, that someone else out there who was feeling isolated would feel less isolated and feel like, yeah, it's okay, I'm struggling, and but I'll get through it, because that's the other side of it. You can say you've just got to be positive. Well, no, that's not really true. You've got to have a lot of chemicals pumped into your body, and you've got to go through all this stuff, because it's a fight against time. It's spread. It's systemic now. That's why you're having chemo. As I said before, not everyone that has cancer will have to have chemo. It depends. If mine had spread to my lymph nodes, so that I needed chemo, and they threw everything but the kitchen sink at me, and it really took its toll. And I think in the end, I didn't care about how it came across to other people. If they were uncomfortable with it, then so be it. My message was to other people who were feeling the same way, because I felt so alone. I just felt like no one was telling the truth. No one was, it's a hard place to be when you feel like you're the only one. Something's wrong with me. I'm supposed to be suffering better and being positive when I'm a realist. Just tell me how it really is, and I could have been prepared. So hopefully someone else out there is like, okay, that can happen. I can be prepared. You'll never be prepared for how much, how painful it can be, but at least it just creates a different mindset. If you're someone like me who likes just to know what's in front of you, it just creates a different mindset. And the mind is that's all you have to hang on to, and you try your best to hang on to it.
From the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council, this is A Cuppa and a Yarn.
I think quite possibly, and this is not actually defending anything or whatever, because I'm a realist too, and I have said to doctors in the past or whatever, like, okay, I always want you to tell me how it is, because I'm one of those people. I need to know even if it's not good news. I need to know, because then I know what I'm working with and then I can understand. But I think a lot of doctors don't, because there are people who will fly with anxiety,
exactly,
and that sort of thing, and cancer can come on top of any other life issues as well. So I think it's
interesting that you say that, because I just had a follow-up last week with my oncologist. So there's all these doctors, right? I spent 90-something days at appointments last year, and that doesn't include hospital stays. It's a full-on time. So one of my specialists, you have a medical oncologist who deals with your chemotherapy treatment, you've got a radiation oncologist, you've got your surgeon, you've got all these different, you've got geneticists, you've got everything, right? All these people, these appointments you've got to go to. And I had a follow-up appointment last week with my medical oncologist, and I felt I was kind of disconnected a little bit from these online forums where people talk about their particular type of cancer. I didn't want to know, in a sense. I was like, I just need to get through this. I can't delve down into the research of it. And so when I had my follow-up appointment, I just kind of said, look, I probably didn't really engage with what was happening, because I couldn't. Mentally, my mind was elsewhere. It was just focusing on the day-to-day. But she said to me, I had a question. I was like, I was never told what grade it was, my cancer, or what stage it was at. I didn't. It was kind of this conversation in my first appointments where it was like, we don't really do staging anymore because there's all these different factors. There's kind of that talk. But I asked her about it at my appointment last week, and she's like, it was stage 3. There's stage 4, and that's, And so when I was told, when I first diagnosed, she's like, it's this grade size cancer that you've got, but didn't tell me the staging, because that would have probably, as you say, about create a bit of fear and anxiety. So I think she tried to save me that at the time. It probably was better that I only found this out last week, because I probably would have went into panic mode. But having said that, when I first had my meeting, my first appointment with her, she's like, if it comes back within the next 10 years, it's stage 4. And at that point, they just manage you. And so that's a lot to take in. That's a nervous giggle, by the way.
So she said to you that if it comes back again now, it'll be stage 4. It'll come back as stage 4? Or they regard it as stage 4?
It's just stage 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
shivers.
The remission thing is kind of, I'm technically in remission. They've gotten it all.
Yep.
But it's one of these things that you have to jump through a hoop every year and get a clear scan every year for the next 10 years before they'll actually say, yeah, you're clear. So I've got, another 10 years ahead of me of scans and medication and fingers crossed. A friend of mine said that it's like being in the mafia. You never get out. And I know how that sounds like it sounds dark, but it's a bit of dark humor, because you're in there's no real way to describe this. You're in this thing, and it does feel like that. You never get out. You just, every year, day upon day, you're thinking about it. Like every decision that I make, I think about, right, I've got 10 years, I need to make sure that I do this. I need to make sure that my kids are okay. It affects your day-to-day decision making. And maybe I'm just different, but being honest about those things brings me comfort in a very strange way, because it's reality.
I'm sure that there have been so many realisations and so much learning, etc., for you. But I don't mean to keep coming back to the show, but this was where, certainly for me, I see you most days, and then you disappeared, for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to cry now.
Don't you stop. I know.
But you know, but I didn't, you know, and then it was, and people don't talk about it, and
No.
and this is the thing, and there was all this sort of whispering and all this sort of
Yeah.
stuff, and then it was like, oh, Theresa's got cancer.
Yeah. You know, coming to NSWALC, and I know people talk about it a fair bit of being like a family, but it was, it really was a safe place for me. That sirens go past.
Yeah. But I understand too why the need for privacy as well. But you know,
I think it was scary for a lot of people. Probably for the first 2 months of my treatment, I didn't come to work very often. I just wasn't there. I couldn't get off my lounge, you know. But there was also that part of me, I probably came back to work sooner than I should have. I still was having chemo when I started coming back 2 or 3 days a week. And it was more for me about normality and routine, and mentally that was helping me to get through. And I know it was scary because all of a sudden I'd come back into work and I looked so different. All my hair was gone. I didn't look well at all. And that's a scary thing to see.
and you were wearing the beanies too.
I was wearing the beanies.
Yeah.
I'd lost every bit of hair on my body. Like, here's another thing, right, is that your eyelashes fall out. Like, I know they say you'll have hair loss, but for some reason, I hadn't even considered that would be my eyelashes.
Wow.
And that doesn't seem like a big deal, but
It's a major
it
deal.
protects your eyes from dust particles, the wind blowing in my face. Like, my eyes were constantly watering and, you know, rubbing them, so I just looked like I was crying all the time, and I was in pain. Just walking my feet, I was losing feeling in my feet, and it was painful. You know, and you having neuropathy and you're walking on the sides of your feet, and I think I've still got a fractured bone in my left foot because you're walking to compensate. And it does damage, you know, but there's moments when it's that type of a side effect that they consider not giving you any more, because once neuropathy goes to a certain point, it's irreversible.
Yeah.
And then at that point where they're saying, you know, we might not give you the last 2 rounds of chemo, you're also thinking, yeah, I hate this chemo, but at the same time, do I need that too? Like, is that going to make a difference to my percentage of survival? So it's just this really strange situation. But yeah, I'm thankful for my work colleagues, my work family, who didn't have to say very much, but just understood, you know, and just didn't stare at me. They just let me be.
Yeah.
And I'm forever grateful for that.
So, you know, with this time next year, part of the whole hook, if you like, with the show is, you know, someone comes and says, this time next year, I'm gonna whatever.
Yeah.
And
So ours was, which seemed, you know, when I made the pledge, it seemed quite frivolous to the audience because I'd made the pledge without saying why I'd pledged that. And it was to take a family holiday.
to Italy, wasn't it?
Well,
Was it
it
to
wasn't
Italy?
intended to be Italy.
Okay.
It just sort of, it eventually ended up being Italy. My kids and I had never had a family holiday that was, you know, just for the sake of going on a holiday. It was always, we were going to see family, so we'll tack a holiday onto the end of that. And we just never ever got around to it. It was busy. Life was busy. Money, yeah, same issues everybody else has. Never seemed a priority, and all of a sudden you starting to think, you know, I might not get this chance again. You know, so what's the point of having money in the bank or belongings or anything when you've not done anything? So when we made a pledge to take a family holiday, and it was, in a sense, it was something to focus on to get me to the other side of all the treatment. You know, everyone needs that something on the horizon to look at.
Absolutely. With making that pledge, and of course when Karl makes the introduction a year later, sort of coming back, there's this whole, you know, the expectation was, well, I knew you were going to be, but, you know, for everybody else, you know, who wasn't seeing you often or at all, you know, people who didn't know you, it's like, is she going to be on the other side of the door?
Yeah.
And you were, of course.
Yeah.
Looking fabulous, I've got to say. She was looking
Wow,
good.
what a sequin dress that was.
sequin?
Probably, you know, I mean, I love a good sequin, but I was not feeling great that
Well,
day.
you look great.
Oh, thank you.
You look great and you looked happy.
And how about those smoke and mirrors? Because half of that wasn't even my own hair.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay,
no,
there you go.
they had to put a lot of, what do they call those things?
Oh, the extensions?
The extensions.
Oh,
in
serious?
yeah.
Okay, well, there you go.
Smoke and mirrors, isn't it wonderful?
Yeah. Well, TV's good at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was surprised, but I tell you what, getting those extensions out the next day, it's not so fun. It's really not fun.
Yeah.
But a little bit of hair that I did have was starting to come out with the extensions. With that, the final shooting, you know, going and getting dressed up when you're feeling so crap. You're going to get dressed up and you go and have your makeup done, you get your hair done. It does feel good, you know. But one of the best things was to see my nan in the audience. My nan's 91. She was just blown away by the whole stage production.
I bet she
And
was.
she's watched Karl forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing him on stage was like this amazing, you know, it's the magic of TV when you're sitting on the one side of it and, you know, you're watching it at home and then all of a sudden you're in the studio and she's seeing it all come together, and having her say to me that she was proud of me for doing it meant a lot. Sorry, I'm going to get all teary, but it meant everything. To me, it was like, yeah, you did the right thing.
And I know that, you know, and I'd love to sort of maybe continue this type of conversation,
Oh,
or
yes.
you, sort of over time, or you talking about doing some other podcasts yourself, etc. But
Yeah.
one of the important things for you was what, you know, people who are going through this and this type of chemo in particular,
Yeah.
you know, it's like this is sort of what you may expect. It's okay if you don't suffer well,
Yeah.
but also, you know, you were pretty strong on what you believe we, particularly as Aboriginal women, because I mean, I know we are vastly overrepresented in breast cancer, I do
Yeah.
believe,
Yeah.
for the general population,
Yeah.
as we are with a number of other conditions, is take the time to make sure that, you know, you're okay. So if something's amiss, you can catch it early.
Exactly. We often prioritise our families, which, you know, that's great. But you can't look after your family if you're not looking after yourself. And I've learnt the hard way about leaving things a little bit too long. But I think it's just so important to advocate for yourself as well. I mean, often I can tell you at least 5 times I've been to a doctor and told them of my family history of cancer, and they've all said, oh, it's not close enough, don't worry. Well, turns out it was close enough, and I ended up with they found that I had the BRCA gene, which is the breast and ovarian cancer gene. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, you know, had I known this earlier, I could have prevented a lot of things, but I just assumed, you know, you just go, okay, yeah, they say it's not close enough, it's not close enough.
Well, we don't know.
That's right.
You know, and that's something.
And the thing was,
it
you
would
know,
be good to know. There's testing so we can know.
there's testing, right? But the thing is, just because you have the gene doesn't mean you end up with cancer. So the argument with doctors is that, well, it doesn't skip a generation, right?
Right.
That's fine. But my mum likely carries the gene, but she's not had cancer. My nan likely carries the gene, not had cancer. So they've made the assumption that because there's 2 generations that didn't have it, didn't show up, didn't present with cancer, the assumption is it's not been passed on, right? Incorrect. It's just that they didn't end up with cancer. So my nan had 2 sisters, one had breast cancer and one had ovarian. So you would think, when I told doctors that would have been enough to go, oh, we should probably just as a precaution, but there's all these other issues around genetic testing and the costs associated and holding genetic information. It's a lot of grey areas. But yeah, sometimes you got to push. I wish I'd have pushed and just said, no, I want to be tested. And even if I'd had to pay for it myself, it would have saved me and my family a whole lot of heartache.
Theresa Lake, thank you very much for having a cuppa and a yarn
Thank you.
with me today. I've finished mine. You haven't finished yours.
I'm going to just keep sipping away.
This is a new story for you,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to create a new story for yourself. This is a new future.
Yeah, it's a new part of. It's a new normal.
Mm-hmm.
There's no going back to the normal that was. It's a new normal.
You can do Nayania Baraya, Nayania Manania Manania.
From the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council, this is A Cuppa and a Yarn.